TV, and in today's episode we're going to be talking about the most important aspect of our children's lives, which is education. We're talking about the right school boards, the right curriculum, and international education. Joining us today we have Kimberly Dixit, President and co-founder of the Red Pen. Hi Kim.
Hi.
Kim, can you sum up the Red Pen for me in about 140 characters?
The Red Pen is your partner in planning and preparing for a global education.
Awesome. So Kim, this is like one of the most requested conversations on Kids Talk Press, so you have a lot of questions coming your way.
All right, I'm ready.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Tell me, when you're looking at all of these students, are there any standout points in terms of extracurriculars? Because we also know a lot of parents building their child's resume pretty much early on, right? Because all seem like clones of each other.
Right.
So do you see a distinct extracurricular that's changed?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I think, unfortunately, there's no right answer. There's no magic bullet that I can say, if your kid does this and they do it to this extent, they will, get into their very aspirational college. It just doesn't exist. I think, like many things, as we, as parents, we understand that, and we've all tried to do it, right? You try to force your daughter to play piano, but somehow she loves robotics. How did that happen, right? So it's very, very important to take their lead and play to their strengths. Yeah. And that's where I've seen students really shine, is when they're able to know themselves and pursue their own passions authentically. Authenticity is a huge part of the process. And so I think, the answer is, what you need to do as a parent to prepare your child early in terms of extracurriculars is find what drives them authentically. And that's another magic question.
I mean, I'm just thinking to ask my 8-year-old really what drives you. But I know this, and the reason I ask you this, Kim, is because I know so many parents who are actually willing to pursue that extracurricular because they can give those competitive exams. So it could be the Trinity, or it could be the Trinity in dramatics, or language, or music, or or it could be sports. And competitive sports has come up so much because they believe that if they've been playing at state level, national level, then that gives them that extra edge, which possibly may work in their favor a little later on.
Yes, possibly. I think, I've seen it all. I've seen it work. I've seen students burn out at the age of 12. Right. I've seen students who, just don't do those exams but have never performed. Right. So, you really need to think carefully, like, why are you doing these things? And they're not it's not automatically going to give some credit.
So Kim, in your responses you mentioned about abroad being a really wide term, and so many other markets opening up for for a lot of international students. Yes. So which are the newer markets besides the US and the UK?
So one of the biggest markets that's opening up right now, of course, is Canada. And Canada has a really high quality of education. Universities in Canada have their criteria is quite stringent and rigid about the quality of students that they want. The faculty are amazing, and the research that goes on in Canadian universities is world class. So there's no reason not to look at Canada, and not to mention it's very immigrant friendly for people who want the opportunity to work and study outside.
Right, especially after the statement the president made after the US president.
Yes.
Right. Do you feel like when you say that these markets have opened up, do you also feel like the parents are more receptive to the newer markets, or they're still looking very US, UK only?
Parents are always receptive to other markets. Often, especially Singapore. Right. Families really like to look at Singapore because it's very near.
Yeah.
Australia, less so. But I think, unfortunately, what I see is parents who say, anything but UK and US is a backup. Well, it's not a backup. Those universities around the world are also really competitive. And if you think about the fact that the US has more than 4,000 institutions of higher education, and Canada has 90 universities, it's obviously going to be competitive because there are fewer colleges, it's fewer institutions. So it isn't a backup. Right. So if people are open-minded, that's great, but they must think of it as, an equally high quality.
Tell me, have you seen in the last couple of years, or in your experience, that are the metro students kind of fighting really hard with tier 2, tier 3 cities in India, or students from there? Do you see like city students now being cloned versus?
I do think that city students tend to try to follow a formula, a package, and a lot of times that comes from the limitations of the it's like the limitations and the availability of opportunities. And so it's like, okay, well, this is out of school, it's robotics, I'll do it. But then if everyone else's other out of school activity is robotics, then it hardly becomes unique. Do you see what I mean? So you have to be careful about making sure that you're not kind of just following the pack and doing the same thing as everyone else. That's not to say that students who do that aren't successful. Some of them are. But I think, yes, I've seen a lot of students, okay, last year somebody wrote a coffee table book and got into Princeton. I'm going to write a coffee table book so I can get into Princeton. But guess what? The Princeton admissions officer figured out pretty quickly that it's easy to publish a coffee table book. So it's not an impressive endeavor anymore.
Right.
So unfortunately, I think that's when students are not, maybe their heart is not in the coffee table book, it's in something else, but they haven't been taking the time to find that.
Right. Also, this interesting thing that you brought out about, the Indian students doing well in science, math, and all of that, but not so well in English. Mm-hmm. Have you seen, what is it that Indian students are pursuing abroad?
Mm-hmm. So mostly, the same things they pursue here, which is engineering and business.
Okay.
Like I said, medicine you cannot really do abroad as much. You can a little, that's another topic. But business engineering are the most popular topic, majors that students are looking at. Economics is another popular one. More and more I am seeing more students who are interested in liberal arts. But what's really heartening is even a student who goes into, let's say, economics or engineering, they might come back a few years later and say, oh yeah, I changed my major to environmental sustainability, or I changed my major to women's studies from history, or something, that shows that they've taken they've made the most of the opportunity of being in an environment where they are exposed to new ideas.
Right. So are these parents typically looking at sending their kids only to Ivy League schools? Are they still the most aspirational for a lot of parents?
I think they are the most aspirational for parents, because often it's just because what they've heard of. They haven't, for many parents, they've not heard of any other colleges besides the Ivy League colleges. The reality is that for children anywhere in the world, the Ivy League is extremely competitive. So typically, parents come to us with those names and we kind of assess the situation and say, look, this is not going to happen and this is what's more realistic. And almost always by the end of the process, people are realistic. They come to understand what really makes sense for their child. There's no point in pushing your child to apply to a college that they're not qualified to get into, and B, suppose they did get in, which is not going to happen, but suppose they did, to be in a learning environment that they can't cope with. So I think people are sensitive to that.
Great. How do Indians fare in the test scores and in the extracurriculars versus a lot of international students?
Well, for better or for worse, India is a testing culture. Right. So students, at least, they don't object to taking tests.
Right.
So the ones who are asked to take the test, they take them. Usually, many students do very, very well. They can sort of ace it and do very well on the standardized tests. Some don't, and some, and that's okay. And I think there are many options for students who don't do well in standardized testing. I think, again, for better or for worse, because India is, most students who are applying abroad have been through an English education. They're not really given any there's no forgiveness on the English section, whereas maybe for other students in other countries, even in Europe, the English part of those tests may not be looked at so carefully as it is in other parts of the world, including India.
Right. When you say, when you talk about the Indian education system opening up with a lot of schools and boards coming into play, do you also feel like what do you think is going to happen in the next 5 or 8 years in terms of the Indian education system for the postgraduate or a better undergrad system? Do you think that's
I think there is a lot of change happening in education in India, and maybe what we're seeing on the sort of secondary education and primary education landscape will sort of filter up or trickle up. So we already see a few universities coming in with more kind of open philosophies about learning and studying, and so the more of those that I think can make headway and be successful and be colleges that that parents, trust and want to sort of send their kids to, the better, because, as I think there's some statistic that by 2020, there'll be a huge dearth of higher education opportunities for India's youth. There just aren't enough colleges and universities. So sometimes that's why people are looking abroad, because even a very competitive student here will not be able to get into a college of his choice, right? So then looking abroad makes sense, because you get a little more opportunity that rewards the hard work that you've done.
Right. Also, what's the kind of cost that we're looking at between different countries and different countries?
So roughly, in the US you're looking at 28 to 52 lakhs a year.
Okay.
Can be 52 lakhs is the higher end. And also one mistake that people make is they think, oh, the Ivy Leagues are the most expensive. They're not.
Right.
The Ivy League colleges are not the most expensive ones. So just keep that in mind, that the rank of the college has nothing to do with the cost. But anyway, so you're 28 to 52 lakhs a year for the US, 25 to 40 lakhs for the UK, and 15 to 30 lakhs for Canada.
Right.
But keep in mind also that the UK is only a 3-year degree typically.
Right.
So you're only paying that amount for 3 years. The
Right.
US and Canada are 4 years.
4 years, right. Right. And what about scholarships? Do you think a lot of, what's the road to get to full grants or scholarships?
In Canada, typically there are very few full scholarships. So, you may get a $10,000, $20,000 discount, but not a full scholarship. UK, again, very, very small amounts here and there for something or the other. And in the US, you do hear more often that, you hear about students getting full scholarships, including, living expenses and everything. So, this girl who I mentioned, she has got a $60,000 a year scholarship.
Wow.
So that's her entire, situation is covered.
That's great.
But I think it's difficult to get those. You have to be one of the most competitive students, and you may also need to lower your expectations a little bit. So if you're academically here, the colleges that are academically here may not give you a scholarship, but the colleges that are academically here might want to attract you with scholarships. So it's a little bit of a strategy. There's a lot of trade-off that happens. One thing people should understand is that scholarships in the US are institution-based for the most part. So you need to apply for that scholarship, whether it's need-based, whether you're looking for a merit-based scholarship, whatever it is. It's all through the university, and for the most part you don't have to do anything except apply to college and say you need money, and then you're considered for it. And so the process is fairly it's not onerous necessarily. There are a few extra forms to fill out.
Right. Kim, in your experience in the last 5 years, how have things changed, or how have applications changed? Like, what did you see 5 years ago that you don't see now, or you see now and you haven't seen back then?
Well, one of the things that's really changed is, like I said, the students, families calling us from tier 2 cities and saying, we want to go abroad. Like, that was never that was rare. It was much more rare in those places than it is today. So we see a lot more people moving abroad from smaller towns. I think we also see a lot more students who look the same. That is, I've gone to an IB program, I've got this IB score, and so now I'm going abroad. And it's like, just having that IB score and being in an IB program, it's good, but it's not all that there is to it, right?
What somewhere stood out for me in this whole conversation was, one, that your child needs to be driving this for sure. Yes, because Indian parents are quite aggressive, really pushy, so we tend to be in the driver's seat always. And the other one is, there's no formula to it.
Yes, right. Those are two major
Those really stood out for me somewhere, because you're right. The Princeton guys probably figured out that this is the second consecutive coffee table book. So those two kind of really resonate with me.
You just can't package it. Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you so much for joining. It was an absolute pleasure, and we look forward to connecting with you and connecting with the Red Pen. For all of those who are looking at connecting with them, you will find details down in the description below. So you can in all likelihood connect with them with whatever questions you have, and they'll be happy to answer that for you. So thank you so much, Kim, and see you guys next week.